Today, what we're going to talk about is the RPE scale. We're going to talk about what is the RPE scale, what does it mean, and why is it an effective scale to use for lifters, especially for those who are powerlifters. So my name is Joseph Lucero. I work with clients one-on-one online, and the RPE scale is huge. It's huge for us to interact based on levels of exertion. The whole purpose of the RPE scale is basically to help communicate how tough an exercise is or any kind of prescribed movement is, so that I can give them the best training protocol possible to help them reach their goals. RPE is rate of perceived exertion. So when you hear that the words unravel, rate of perceived exertion, it's perceived based on you and how you feel with the movement and how much you've exerted. So most RPE scales are generally between, when it comes to strength, between 1 to 10. I use that scale with my clients. I even give them a 0.5 increment in between. But if you look at the scale right here about RPE, this scale is going to show you numbers between 1 to 10. And it starts off with movement just being easy, almost effortless. And then at the bottom, it gets to the point where the scale shows something is max effort. So the reason why the scale exists is because you being the athlete, you're trying to tell, whether it's a coach or whether you're just trying to log it down, you're trying to discuss how tough something was between easy and max effort. And the reason why you want to do that is because now, knowing what the rating is from there, you can understand, do I add more weight? Do I need to bring the weight down? Am I in the right range I want to be in? Because some movements, you don't necessarily have to be max effort. They might need to be moderate in a way because you want to use more powerful movement and you don't want to necessarily exhaust yourself from start to finish. It's important for powerlifters to use it. Just an example, it's important for them to use it because now they understand where their intensity is. I like to use this word ramping. Whenever we start training, so let's imagine we're working a 12-week cycle. From week 1 to week 12, obviously the intensity is going to ramp up, but in between all those 12 weeks, we call them blocks. So we'll do like a block of training from week 1 to 4, a block from 5 to 8, and then a block from 9 to 12. And the reason why we do blocks is because in that block, we're focusing on specific concepts. Are we working on lockout? Are we working on max effort? Are we working on the basics, just foundational movement? But within those blocks, so from week 1 to 4, I try to ramp it up. So by the end of it, they're at like that RPE 9 to 10. They gave max effort, and then we dial it back down for the next block. So when you look at training from start to finish, it's not going to be linear necessarily. I know that people discuss training being linear, low intensity to high, but in between, you're going to have those little weeks where you have to bring down the RPE just to help make sure you're not burning out and getting overwhelmed. So that's why it's important for powerlifters. It's important to use RPE so that you understand from week to week, you're ramping up intensity and making sure you're not overloading yourself every time, because some weeks need to be harder and some weeks need to be just slightly easier. And based on how you perceive your exertion, you should make sure that you're not overloading yourself and always at a number 10 every week. And that's not just for powerlifters. It's for any kind of strength athlete, any strongman, any traditional athlete. You want to build up the intensity. You want to elevate your RPE scaling, but then dial it down and then start at a little bit of a lighter weight the next block so that you can give yourself time to build up the intensity. But that's a whole conversation of itself too. Intensities, muscle system, nervous system. We're just focused on RPE, what it means and the importance it has on athletes. So how do you calculate RPE? A lot of it is individualistic. And one of the ways I try to help people calculate the RPE scale is I like to use another scale as well. People call it RIR, reps in reserve. So if you ever hear a powerlifter or strongman or strength traditional athlete talk about RPE, sometimes you're going to hear them talk about RIR, reps in reserve. And why it's important to know that is because as you go up the scale on RPE, let's say I said an exercise was an RPE of 8. Remember, the highest is 10, right? So between 8 to 10 is 2 units. So I integrate RIR as a conversation piece because if I say something's RPE 8 out of 10, and there's 2 units in between 8 to 10, that means I could have maybe done 2 more reps. So let's say I'm working with a coach and I do barbell curls for 15 reps and I got to the 15 reps and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have probably done 5 more. Then I would integrate this RIR thought process, reps in reserve, and say, oh, if I had 5 reps left, I'll take 5 from 10, which equals 5. And I'll say, oh, the RPE was probably about a 5. So that's what makes that perceived exertion concept that's not as finite. There's no exact number to it. Instead of perceiving it, now there is a means to calculate it, and it makes it better and more realistic for people who need more of a tangible thought process. So there is an RPE calculator below inside the description of this video. And what's cool about it is there is some mathematical formula to where if you tell me the weight you did, about the RPE you were at, and how many reps you did, if you use the calculator described below, it can tell you an estimated max that you might be at. And the reason why it might be good to use this RPE calculator is because now you might know your threshold, your endpoint, and you can use that as a tool through training. Meaning, if you use the RPE calculator and it said your max on bench is 225 and you're hitting reps of 185, then you're like, oh, okay, I'm getting closer to my max. Maybe I should try 195 next time. Ooh, I'm getting closer to 225, and now I think I can do it for 2 or 3 reps. It just gives you a basis to format your training and give you some guidance. So you definitely want to try to look into that RPE calculator, which has an RPE calculator chart in there to help you understand how to work through some of that stuff too. Now, when I mentioned RPE, I also mentioned RIR. Now, another scale we can go in there that can go into the conversation is the Borg RPE scale between 6 to 20. At first glance, when I looked at this back in school, I thought, man, this is confusing. How are we going to tell people to rate themselves through all of these random numbers? But also, why are we starting at a 6? Why are we starting at a 6 instead of 1? So Borg, a Swedish scientist, created this chart from 6 to 20 to rate your exertion because he believed it was going to be that your exertion was 10% of your threshold. You, when you exercise, have a max heart rate. Usually the max heart rate is 220 minus your age. So right now I'm 35. So if I did 220 minus 35, that'd be 185. And what's going to happen is between 6 to 20, if I rate an exercise out of 10, okay? Now, let's pretend that I'm an expert at this Borg scale and I understand it. If I said a 10 was where I was with an exercise, I'll do 10 times 10, and that means 100. That means I'm at 100 beats per minute. My heart rate's at 100. And based off 100 to 185, I'm not very close to my max effort. That's the whole point of the scale for Borg's RPE being 6 to 20. He thinks it's 10% of your effort. So essentially multiply those numbers that you give as RPE numbers by 10, and that should represent where your heart rate is within exercise. A lot of people use specific terms in exercise. I'm going to tell you one right now called moderate. Not too tough, not too easy. And most people, when they're told about Borg's scale, they'll be told, hey, if you think an exercise is medium, it's going to be an RPE of 12 to 14, because what that equates to in heart rate is between 120 to 140. And the reason why I got 120 and 140 is because I multiplied those numbers by 10, 12 and 14. And if your heart rate during exercises is between 120 to 140, for most people, that would mean that you're working out, but you're not at a high threshold yet. So they definitely say, hey, as a basis, when you think about Borg, think about 12 to 14 being moderate. Now, if I said, hey, I'm exercising and I'm like at an 18 out of 20, you multiply that by 10, that's 180. I'm almost close to my max heart rate. My max heart rate is 185. So that means I'm at a very high level. So again, whether it's the Borg scale, the RPE scale, the higher you get on the chart, that means the harder the intensity is. And that means you're at almost max capacity. If you want to have a little bit more of a basis to compare results, you can also use things like a heart rate monitor just to see where you are. Because if you rated something on the Borg scale, you said something was a 15, that's 150. If you check a heart rate monitor and it says your heart rate's at 150, 152, then you're close to being accurate on the Borg scale for giving off your feedback on movement. But all that being said, bringing it back to us in Powerlifting Technique, we want you to understand that RPE is a scale from 1 to 10 being used to describe how tough an exercise is to prescribe your effort and moment. So whether you're working with a coach or you're keeping a diary log and thing like that, and try to compare your results. Maybe one time in January, you hit 225 for 5 reps and you said it was an RPE 10. You go down the road in December that year and you did 225 for 5 and you think it's an RPE 7. Now you know you've made growth. You perceived that things are getting a little bit more effortless as time goes on, meaning you're getting stronger. And that's the whole point, is to track your progress from how you perceive your exertion in that moment. So again, my name's Joseph Lucero, Powerlifting Technique. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope now you understand RPE, RIR, and RPE on the Borg scale from 6 to 20 as it comes to perceiving your exertion with movement. Leave a comment, like the channel, subscribe, and we will check you next time.